So a while back, I did a video talking about 10 heroes who I'd like to see in the Absolute Universe. Today, I'd like to focus on one of them, Absolute Nightwing. In the past, I wasn't really a big Nightwing guy, wasn't a big Robin guy, wasn't a big sidekick guy in general. I mean, I guess technically Nightwing's not a sidekick, but people kept telling me how great he was, and I read a couple of volumes of Tom Taylor's run, and I really liked it. It was a really good story. He's a cool character. I also think he's particularly well suited for the Absolute Universe because he has some pretty obvious things that you can take away from him. The person who's got it the worst so far is Absolute Wonder Woman, who doesn't have Themyscira. She doesn't have her mother. She doesn't have her Amazonian sisters. She still has a mother figure in Circe, but they have to live in hell. So that sucks. And I think things should be even tougher for Dick Grayson. Here's how I see it. You have Blüdhaven. It's a dark, grimy city. Gray skies, always rain. And there's factories and smoke and just gross garbage everywhere. And among the factories and alleys of this crap hole, there's an orphan named Dick Grayson struggling to survive. So unlike Absolute Batman, Nightwing does not get to keep one of his parents. I'm sorry, Dick. But things weren't always so bleak. He grew up with a happy home. He had his parents, John and Mary. They didn't make a lot of money. They worked at a refining facility for rare earth metals or elements, whatever they're called, owned by Iron Lotus Industries. And John was a foreman, so he made enough money for them to get by. Mary was an activist leading the charge to unionize at the factory, so that created some conflicts between her and the Iron Lotus head of security, David Cain, and a fixer named Mr. Wilson. And then that also created trouble for John with the CEO, Sandra Wusam. Now, Dick's life changed forever after an explosion at the factory killed both his parents, but then it just quickly brushed aside as an accident. Now Dick is on his own. He doesn't have Alfred to care for him. He doesn't have Batman to guide him. He's just out there on the streets of Blüdhaven. That's his home. And survival in general, I mean, it's a bleak place, you know? Survival's tough for anybody, but especially orphans. So he falls in with a gang led by a small-time criminal named Tony Zucco. And his gang is, they provide food for him, shelter, and a sense of belonging. Maybe Tim Drake is there. So Dick shows that he's useful. He slips through tight spaces. He disappears over rooftops, evades police, parkour kind of stuff, almost acrobatic. And despite his life in crime, he sees suffering around him and he doesn't like it. It makes him sad. His mom and dad instilled some values in him the way that we see Kal-El's parents do for him. And so he can't ignore the suffering. And he starts to steal from the rich and the corrupt, the crooked landlords, the factory foremen who don't care about employee safety, the officials who take bribes, and the business leaders who pay those bribes to keep the city under their thumbs. Dick takes from them and then he shares with the people who have nothing. Maybe they call him Robin Hood. Maybe Robin for short. One night he goes out, he's on a job working for Zucco, and he finds something he's not supposed to see. He sees some records hidden in a warehouse shipment, and he uncovers a connection between Zucco's gang and that Iron Lotus factory where his parents died. Maybe Zucco was involved. He has to think, is this the guy who killed my parents? He's not ready to confront him at first, so he continues this life of crime, but becomes more and more defiant and more focused on his alternate project, going out here and being a Robin Hood given to the poor. And then eventually Zucco finds out Dick's skimming off the top. And he didn't realize that it was to provide for families in need. He wouldn't have cared if he did. He has him beaten, has him kicked out of the gang, and now Dick has nowhere to turn. And he decides to go straight. He gets a job at the factory, the same one where his parents were killed. As he works there, he starts to hear some whispers about corruption and environmental devastation, exploited workers, all the kinds of things that we're seeing elsewhere in the Absolute Universe being perpetrated by the Lazarus Corporation and Roman Sionis and the Black Mask's operations. So he decides he doesn't care what it takes. Maybe he thinks back to some meaningful moment with his mom where she said something that spurs him on to action. So he has some makeshift mask, relies on the skills that he honed out there on Blüdhaven's rooftops, and he starts this deeper investigation into Iron Lotus Industries, somewhat from the inside. It's not like he's working in corporate or anything, but at least he's in the building. He's in the factory, on the factory floor, and he has more access than he would otherwise. And he's trying to figure out, why did Zucco kill his parents? And that's where the legend of Nightwing begins, starts to spread. And one night he breaks into the Iron Lotus facility and he gets intercepted by some dark figure who's just awesome at combat. And they get the upper hand, they subdue him, and it turns out it's this young company executive named Cassandra. And she explains, or I should say, he explains what he's doing. And then she tells him that she is the CEO's daughter. And she is actually also working to expose what was happening at the company. And she gives him a little more information, tells him about that he needs to watch out because they're starting to look into this guy who's been breaking in and out. So yeah, she lets him go. She doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't quite trust her because she is the daughter of the CEO. So, but he's willing to work with her. So he is getting out there, getting deeper into the secrets, and he does start to find that he's being hunted by this lethal enforcer, and it's Deathstroke. We would only know that because of how he looked. I mean, he wouldn't know. And then as Deathstroke closes in, Dick discovers that Iron Lotus is cutting corners to maximize profits. So they're not safely disposing of hazardous byproducts. Apparently refining these rare earth minerals can be very toxic. And they're cutting corners. They're dumping them into nearby places, burying them under communities, poisoning the environment, endangering people. The reason that I think it should be something like this as being like what the factory is all about is that if you look at what Joker's doing, he's at these semiconductor plants. You look at what Lazarus Corporation's doing with the diamond mines. It seems like the bigger theme is supposed to have something to do with them controlling all of these really important parts of the supply chain for, maybe it's like for AI, maybe it has something to do with things that are going to be given to Brainiac so that he can make something more. I don't know, but the whole point would be to kind of build towards that and have a way for Nightwing to be a part of the larger universe. So it wasn't his mother's activism that had gotten his parents killed. He discovers that it was his dad's protesting about what they were doing, realizing these unethical practices. That's why they killed him. Maybe Mary was just collateral damage, or maybe it was a happy accident that they took out this other person who was kind of a thorn in their side. And now Nightwing confronts Zucco, but Zucco says he doesn't have anything to do with it. Nightwing dangles him off a building to make sure, and Zucco lets it slip that who we should really be looking into is Deathstroke. That's the guy who's hunting him, also known as Slade Wilson, the Iron Lotus fixer. So the deeper Dick digs, the more he realizes that Iron Lotus Industries, they've got bigger plans, and their reach extends even further than he knew. He keeps seeing this name show up, Roman Sionis, Black Mask. So he realizes that Deathstroke killed his parents, and that there's something even bigger going on than he realized. It was just originally a mission to figure out who killed his parents. Now there's this conspiracy that stretches across the absolute universe and leads him to Gotham City. So that's it. What do you think?